So I'm just using a trial mode of something, but all right, let's get started for today, huh? Delicious, delicious cake, delicious pizza. Anybody who's remote, sorry. But so given that it's the last day of this class, I didn't want to pile on a whole bunch of new stuff, really stress you out with other heavy concepts and that you need to apply right now. So I was thinking what would be something fun that might also still be very practical, showing you how to build something out. And I thought, what about instead of just doing a small incremental React concept like we've been building, what if I show you how to leverage this larger ecosystem of React components and just the community to build something out much more quickly than you do when you're creating your own components, right? This isn't a replacement for making your own components. It's just showing you that there's a lot of stuff out there to leverage. And my thought is, what better than this Material UI, which I think is probably the most popular React framework. It's the one I've used. And it gets a lot of usage. So what I'm going to start with is, even though I do want to build a whole project, I asked you guys to take a look at some of those themes and let's go down that path. I want to show you like what you can get from this really quickly, even with something that already exists. So we've got our very basic clock project that we've been working with already. I can even start that up and we can see it again just to remind us what it looks like. And this was definitely more about showing us, how to use these different React concepts, right? How do you hook events to your actions? How do you handle state, et cetera? It wasn't really about styling, although we did a little bit of work with the styling on it. So how could we do something that would give us a lot more styling more quickly on this though, right? Like, let's go ahead and try that out. Instead of us doing all of the styling by hand, because that's not really what we're after. We're trying to build functionality with it. I'm going to pull some of this Material UI framework and we'll leverage that directly into the application. So it's got some basic installation instructions, which is, hey, you need to just go ahead and install this Material UI core bit. So I'm going to stop the application real fast because you usually don't want this running when you're doing something like this. And I'll just run these commands. I don't think you have to do save anymore, but I'm going to say save anyways, just to make sure that it saves the dependency in my package JSON file. But this will go pull down this basic Material UI library, or the core of it. And then let's get started with, and I'm so lazy here, I can even just go right to the usage, because this is even doing exactly the same thing I want to do. I just want to make my button fancier than it currently is, right? So the first thing I need to do, if I'm going to accomplish that, let's see if I've installed it now. All right, we've installed it. So we can start our server back up, so we'll be able to see these changes more live while it's going. And if I come back, oh, there we go, we're running. Come back over here to the actual application. I'm just going to go ahead and close some of these files we don't need for the time being. And this button that we have, let's just go ahead and replace this styling and everything that we have around it with this Material UI concept of a button. So here we can just import it right from the Material UI core. Again, I'm just stealing from their examples instead of doing this stuff from, remembering it. And that should look very similar to importing that we've done with anything else, right? We're just importing a button, except we're importing it from this sort of component element. And now what I'm actually going to do, I don't care about this class name anymore or this style, but I do still want an on click when this button gets clicked. And I'm actually just going to leave that there. And I can't call this button here because I imported this as button. So I'm going to rename this as Material UI button. I should be able to call it whatever I want, I think. And then I'm just going to change this over from the button we had to be a Material UI button. Let's see what happens. Boom. We got all of that styling just by leveraging one of their components. We got some flash stuff. We can stop the clock. Yeah.
So is this also like responsive as well?
That's a good question. It depends on what settings you put on it. For people who aren't familiar with what a responsive website is, because that may be something that's new, let me find a really fast example. Bootstrap is probably the easiest way to. Oh, thank you. Bootstrap is probably the easiest way to show you something responsive, because Bootstrap is sort of the precursor to a lot of the responsive web pages, and what it means is that it's going to change the way it looks as it resizes. So let me bring this up, and then if we shrink this window down, let me grab a side. You'll see like that image just shrunk. And as we go smaller, you'll see, for example, the heading at the top or the toolbar is all going to collapse. So some of the stuff dropped below now. And now the toolbar at the top is going to collapse into something different. Eventually, it'll actually probably collapse into just I don't know if I can get small enough for that on this, but a lot of times it'll collapse into a hamburger menu, or as I like to call them, a junk drawer. And that's what that concept of responsive is where depending on the resolution of, or how much you have width to work with, it's going to change the actual layout. So yes, these are responsive, or at least Material UI supports responsive components, but you can change the settings to be responsive or not, depending on your needs for your application. So there's a lot of complexity there. But you notice, I mean, there's a lot of cool styling we got that we just leverage right from Material without having to do anything, like this hover behavior, this flash when we click changes something. You know, there was even sort of I think another sort of hovering style. So all of that came from us just pulling in this third-party component and leveraging it in place of ours. And you notice the other great thing about that is we didn't have to change very much about what we were doing with this, right? Yes. What's that? I don't have a real agenda, no. I mean, if you guys would rather just work on stuff like that, we can do that. You know, I was just going to go through building something out using some of these Material UI components real quickly, which, you know, could also be cool. So it's, you guys can sort of make your choice on that. If you'd prefer to do hands-on, you know, just working with you on some projects that you already have, we can do that. If you prefer, you know, sort of this example of maybe trying to build something out using Material UI components, we can go down that route. Any strong preferences?
I don't really have a project.
A little both. All right, yeah. We can split it. We've got plenty of time. So we can do this maybe for like a half an hour or something, and then we've got an hour worth of time if people want to do some hands-on working through their own projects. That would be great. So we've got something really basic here, right? But what would it look like if we tried to use this Material UI from the very beginning and not just one component, but we're building a site out using a lot of their components, right? Is my next question. So let's try and tackle that. Let's see what we can do in, say, a half an hour or so. I don't know what that'll look like, but we're gonna try and find out. So do you guys ask people to take a look ahead of time? Did anybody have an example of something they liked from maybe their templates or something? Oh, I'm not leveraging one of those. I want to try and use their components to lay something out similar. So I wasn't going down to like the themes. I was looking more at these templates where it's like, oh, if we want something that looks, we want to put together something that looks like this pricing page. How could we do that using their components, right? They're in the getting started. They've got templates right here. And of course, they've got the source code for how to build those out, but I was going to try and do it from scratch and see how that goes. So any of them you think look interesting? Like the dashboard? All right, let's see what we can do. Let's try and build out a dashboard that looks something like this using some Material UI components. How does that sound? All right. So I don't know how far we'll get in, say, 30 minutes, but we're going to give it a go. We're going to do a create React app. Start, and we're going to do a Material UI dashboard. This is the sort of slow part, so while that's running, I'm going to hop back over here and start looking at what components I'm going to want to use. So, all right, I know this is their, like, I can't remember what that's called exactly. Let's look over here. It's going to be an app bar, I believe. So I'm going to want an app bar.
Darren?
Yes.
So all you had to do was download the Material UI, and you don't have to download anything extra to use the components?
Not necessarily. It depends on what you want to do. It walks you through the basics of it. If we go back up here to this getting started, the installation portion right here, it's got the, install Material UI. And then there are two other small steps depending on what you want to do. The next one you really should do, which is install the Roboto font. And that's because Material UI expects to use the Roboto font for all of their components. So if you're not using that in your application, the components may not lay out the way that you want them to. Like your font may bump up against the edges of it or go outside of the bounds. And so we'll do that in just a moment as well. And then it talks about icons. So if we want to leverage some icons inside of it, which we might do in a minute, then you got to go fetch icons from somewhere, either font or SVG style icons, and install those. But yeah, really, you're pulling that whole component library in and then pulling them in piece by piece to use them. So let's grab the Roboto font too. That one's going to be pretty simple because it even has instructions. We just npm install it just like we did the other stuff. So we'll go into this new, first off, I need to install Material UI, right? Because I'm in a new project. So I'm going to go into the Material UI dashboard and I'm going to go ahead and grab, since this is a new one, I need to install this into this project, not my clock project that we were just in, right? Let me bring that back to the top for you guys. And we're just going to go ahead and install that in this project. And then the next thing we'll do is going to go ahead and install this Roboto typeface. And again, this is one of those things we're going to get as a result of doing Webpack builds, which is we can install a font and import it into our JavaScript file. Whereas normally to get a font, you would do something like this. You would have to put a link in your HTML file, which is fine. It's a perfectly fine way to put it in. I can zoom in a little bit, but oh look, they're responsive too. You see their sidebar disappeared. But it's a lot of times really nice if you can do this sort of import directly into your JavaScript, because you just get to treat these resources that aren't JavaScript like things you can import and use. Let the Webpack or whatever your bundler is worry about how to convert it into this link in your HTML file, right? All right, so we installed the first one. Let's see, is this, now let's grab the typeface. I'm gonna go ahead and switch my code window over. So we're going to, instead of the folder we're in, let's open up our new one, which is Material UI Dashboard.
So besides creating,
What's that?
So besides, of creating the app, the next thing you ran was just the npm for the material.
Yeah, yeah. I just, that might be getting a little bit ahead of myself. I could have started it to make sure the app created correctly, but I feel confident in that. And so I just went ahead and grabbed the material UI bit. And then I installed the fonts the same way. And now the next step to build on that is to make sure I import that font. And I'm just going to put that right in my index.js file because that's a sort of global thing I want to do. So I'm going to treat it sort of globally, putting it in the index.js as opposed to a component specific file, right? And now we're not using any Material UI stuff yet, but let's see, we should be able to start and be running, and we'll have that standard, you know, create React app starting that we always see, the spinning logo and whatnot, unless we've done something wrong. Get it all spun up, see what we have. There we go. But this isn't what we want, right? We want something that looks like this. Oh man, did you see that animate? Whew. So what we need to do now is start figuring out how we're going to do this whole layout, right? Well, let's say the first thing, I already know I'm going to want to use this. What was it? That was the app bar, I believe, right? So let's go find that again. I'm just going to start from here. Oh, we've got an app bar with buttons. All right, let me go look. Yep, I've got a button here and something over here maybe. Or maybe that's not a button on that side, but I'm pretty much going to, at this point, sort of cut and paste and leverage this as like my starting point, right? I'm not going to treat this like I'm starting from scratch. So I know I need this app bar and this toolbar, which it looks like it's nesting inside of it. I'm going to grab these components, move over here. Now I don't want all of this. I want to change this app, right? Get rid of everything that we already have. So instead of all that stuff, I won't have their logo. I don't even want their app.css. I'm going to do my own. Oops. I need to come back here, grab this stuff again because I pasted something else. And I can start importing these things from Material UI, right? And let's then, again, I'm going to go over here and use sort of this reference. Now I can't put all this stuff in here the exact way I have it, but I'll simplify it from what's already in there. I'm going to drop this guy in. I don't have this button bit yet. I don't care about this. Maybe I want the typography thing. That's putting this sort of header up there, I guess, in this example. So if I collapse this, we'll see it come back up there. That's where this news.
What is the make style to really braces the line that's above what you just have and paste it in?
What is all of this?
Line 2, the make styles.
Like right here?
No, about 8 or 10 up.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
That's an import for a named export. So if we've been using a lot of default exports, like export default app here, you can also export stuff named, which is like export. When you name exports, the way that you do it is you export a object literal that contains a key for every item you want to export. So in this case, let's say we want to export app as app. Export it like this. Now we have a named export as well of this app. And that way you can, the difference between a default export and a named export is what I did in the other project, you remember, where I imported the button from Material UI. And then I said, oh wait, the name of this conflicts with the button component I have in here. So I just changed the name in my import. You can do that with a default export trivially. But with a named export, you have to be explicit when you do that because it knows the name of it. So if you are going to do that with a named export, it's a little trickier. The benefit is somebody, you can export a lot of things from one file. So for example, if you have a bunch of JavaScript utility functions that you've written and you want to keep them together because it makes sense to put them in a file together and maybe they use each other or use some of the same backing stuff, you can put all those in one file, put those as named exports, and then you can just import them in the different files as needed. Another thing you might do with that, which is a pattern we use a lot in our development process, is you might do a default export of the main thing, and then you might do named exports that you might use when you're testing it or in other situations where you need to refer to them. So I'm going to start with the simpler version, right? I may bring all this stuff in a minute, but let's get started with just a very simple toolbar. I'm just going to see what happens if I put some text in here. I don't know what this will look like yet, but we're going to find out. This should re-render. Yeah, we've got there's a fair bit of stuff going on there already, and a lot of it's really subtle that you might not notice if you weren't paying attention. Like there's some drop shadowing here that we get because that's all part of Material UI, right? That's a lot of stuff that might take you a long time to tweak and get right if you were trying to build out something from scratch. But Material UI, having been a component library that you can use, has already done all of that and has made it consistent between all their components. So, it's going to have a look and feel that's going to feel very consistent just starting, right? All right, what's our next thing? Well, we have dashboard here. Well, that is a little bolder than what I have. So I guess they're using some sort of, one of those typography elements maybe to make it bolder. So let me go see. I guess I already have an example sort of here of what it looks like. And some of this, I don't expect all of you to necessarily be like, oh, that makes perfect sense right now in terms of all of these bits here, because it involves digging down into the documentation for this library and reading. But it also should look like stuff that, we've sort of done. It should be a pattern relatively similar to stuff that we've already been seeing. So here I'll grab this typography element because, again, I'm a good lazy programmer and I'm not going to write this stuff from scratch if I don't have to. Indent this guy here. This is indented too much. And then instead of news, I want this to be, dashboard. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, class name is wrong here. Let's step over here. It's definitely bolder. I'd say it's getting pretty close, right? Not bad. And we can tweak that if we want. All right, so we've got a little bit of a dashboard going on. We've got to start with this thing. Let's see. Oh, we've got about 20 minutes left. Let's see what else we can get in. Now we want to have some sort of sidebar here too. Let's see what we have here. What is this going to look like? I happen to know that what a lot of these names are. I think there's going to be an expansion panel. Let me see. Nope. All right. Oh, this is a drawer. There we go. So this is a drawer that we're opening.
Jared,
Yes.
did you stream this by any chance?
It should be streaming. Yes. I did not post the link. Look at that. Let me, where is the link? It should give me one here. Hold on a moment. Oh yes, thank you. Their share is really weird. All right. Give me just a moment. Yeah, it is being streamed, so you guys can go rewatch this if you want to. But let's, all right, so this is some sort of drawer we want, right? We can see that we're getting this. Here's an example. Here's, a persistent drawer. Oh, that looks like what I'm looking for, right? Looks like it does what I want. So let's see how we bound that up. I'm going to ignore the app bar portion for now, if I can, and try and just look at this drawer bit. There's a lot going on in here. And we could go look at the reference and go with something simpler if we want, but again, I'm pretty lazy, so I'm going to start with just the drawer bit and I'll see what I'm missing. Right? Now, normally you wouldn't put all of this in one component like this, like the app. I'm sort of leaving it together just for the sake of going a little faster right now. And you can see they're also doing a lot of extra styling that we're not going to be doing in ours. So we won't be able to match exactly. Where's the end of my drawer? Let's steal this. I'm gonna put that down here after this. And we've got all sorts of stuff that isn't allowed in there, right? Let's just get rid of the class name. Let's get rid of all of the class stuff right now. Even though I'm gonna need it. Let's get rid of this open hook. Really gonna get rid of all the content inside of it. We may bring it all back in a minute, but let's just try and put a drawer in here and see what happens first. Oh, you know what? I am missing something that's important. I need to tell it that it is open. So it needs to be open. Let's see if that works. I was hoping it would. All right. We have to go back here and actually look at the documentation for a drawer. Now. So that's all the example stuff. I need to look at what a drawer actually supports to get this working. If true, the drawer is open. So it should be anchored on this side. It should be open.
I think it has to have that icon button on it in order to be able to close it.
I don't think that's the case. It might be that because I have no content in there, it doesn't take up any space. Or it might be missing the classes bit here as well, which I would hope we don't have to bring in to get it set up correctly. So let me see if got this divider that we're creating. We've got a list in there. I'm gonna try and put some content in it, even if it's trivial. We're gonna make a junk drawer. Let's see here. There we go. So it's because I had no content in there, right? Now at least we have something in there. And we've got, the start, right? We're starting to build out some of these bits and pieces. The next question I would have here is, well, yeah, can I bind that so that I can close it and open it? And also, can I make it so that it pushes the other content aside when it opens up, right? Pushing the other content to the side should be, let me see here, anchor classes. I would think that that would be happening already, but I could be wrong here. That's something where, it may take a little bit more work to get it to push it to the side than just spinning something up real fast. So let me see if we can find something in here that jumps out real fast in terms of what's going on. We've got a main and it shifts based off of whether it's open or not. So that's what they're doing to accomplish that. They're changing some class styling in here that says if the drawer is open, this whole main section is going to shift over a little bit. So that would take a little more work for us to accomplish than what we're doing right now. So maybe we'll just use a different type of drawer and it won't be exactly the same. Which is maybe we'll, instead of having it be a persistent drawer, we can do a swipeable, like temporary drawer type setup. And in that, we should be able to, let me dig it up here. Should just be a little bit of a styling change. Oh, a different component, it looks like. Okay. So, should be pretty, oh, that's the button. Let me see, hold on. Where's my actual drawer? On close, toggle drawer. No, I think that is the drawer. Let me see. No, it's definitely not. Toggle drawer. Oh, it's generating it all right here in this side list component and then embedding them into it. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna skip the drawer bit. See, already got stumped. But these other layout bits shouldn't be as hard because those are pretty much just putting some cards into some sort of grid layout. So if I pull the drawer for now, and under this app bar, we're going to want to create some sort of grid with cards. Now I'll hop up here and we've got a grid layout example right here. We can create some grid items at different sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and pretty much steal this as a starting point at least, just like we did with some of the other stuff. Get rid of the drawer, we're not going to do that. And we're going to throw some stuff into our grid, even though ultimately we're not going to have all these. We'll simplify it a fair bit. So under this app bar, let's do this. Oh, I need to bring in this paper. The paper bit, by the way, is a very simple component. All that's doing is creating the effect of it laying on top of something else. So you know that drop shadow I was talking about? That's what the paper component is doing for us, is generating a drop shadow capability. So let me get rid of this class name bit. Let's see if that works. So we've got a grid there now, a basic grid layout, edge to edge, and we've got these little drop shadows, right? So you heard me saying that's what the paper does. I believe, unless they've changed the way it works in this version, let me search up the paper so I can just show you that real fast. One of the properties that you can apply to a paper component is how high it's elevated. So I'm going to put that on this. Let me see, 24. Okay, just inline 24. Do I need to? No. That should work. Let's see if that works. You should see this guy's like got this huge drop shadow below him, right? We can drop that down, 6 or something, right? And it still is higher in a sense than the other ones, right? That's what that paper element gives you, is a very easy way to make stuff look like it's higher or lower than other items. So we've got some stuff here that's also saying how wide they are, but we don't want papers, just these paper elements. We want to actually have something that looks like cards, right? So let's make some larger items on there that are these sort of cards. Now I'm not going to be able to get this grid really easily, but we can go find ourselves a card. this should be easy for us to pull in some sort of card. Pull in this sort of simple card. Again, just leveraging some of these components. Oh, we're gonna need some card content too. So I will grab these 3 right now. And then I'll get rid of a fair bit of stuff inside of this card. And we're not going to leverage this class bit that they have. But instead of this just as paper element, let's make this guy a card. Again, like I said, get rid of a good bit of stuff in here. I don't care about any of this class name logic. Don't care about any of that class name logic. No idea what these are. Just change that a little bit. Let's get rid of our button. We're not actually going to have any card actions. Let's see if we're missing anything else. Let's see what we have here. So now we've turned this into a card, right? And we could make that, well, we want to put something else beside it. Oh, we want this to be a certain width and this to be, you know, a smaller width next to it. Oh, we've got an example right down here. So instead of this guy being the full width of this entire grid, let's make him, I've got my indentation a little off here. It's killing me. This whole thing, let me just do this. This should work. There we go. The topography still got screwy. There we go. So let's make this a little narrower, right? This is going to be like 8. Something else shouldn't be able to go next to it. We've got some space. So now let's go ahead and throw something else next to it. You know, we'll just, again, lazy enough. I'm going to steal this whole thing to put it next to it. And if we have 12 columns to work with, the other one was 8. I don't know if 4 will work. There we go. Got 2 cards next to each other. And we could probably set their height if we wanted to make them the same height. But this gives us, you know, we're starting to already get this layout with just a little bit of work, right? We haven't had to do a ton of extra work yet. Get rid of these other grid items because those aren't what we're looking for. What do we have below? Oh, we've got one that's like the full width. It's got, you know, let's take a look at what we could do here because we're sort of running up on that 30-minute window. So what else could we leverage if we wanted to pull some of this stuff in, right? Although, you know, that's not bad for 30 minutes worth of time. A little bit of work to get it spaced out better. Oh, I must have deleted too much. Got rid of my second one. Yep, I did. Can't get rid of the copy of it. There we go. That should be correct. Yeah. So what else could we leverage, right? Talking about using somebody else's framework as opposed to writing everything from scratch. Let's start seeing what we have here. What else do we want? We've got these. This is a button of some kind, right? So what do we have for buttons? Let's go look at what exists. It's going to have, buttons like this, or text buttons, or outline buttons, group buttons, split buttons. It might be like a floating action button, maybe. Seems to fit, or just an icon button. So there we go. We can pull that in and drop that button over on the other side of our app bar. What else are we missing here, right? This is some sort of header with some styling on it. And we know we don't have this hooked up, but we could fix that. Do we have a table? You know, can I get some sort of table without doing stuff from scratch as well? Pretty sure we're gonna have, here's like a table. So if we wanted to create a table inside of one of these, we've got everything that we need to be able to create a sort of nicely formatted table with some data. And we've got a good set of reference to pull that in if we want. You know, maybe we have time for just that. Let's see. I'm gonna take our card, take our grid item. Let's make one more. Put it down here. This is gonna be the full width, so we want it to be 12. We're gonna get rid of everything that we have in the card. No, I don't have any card actions, let's say, so it doesn't need that space. And the content here, we're just gonna nix that for the time being. Let's go find our example of leveraging a table. Oh, they've got table rows, table headers. They got a lot of things specific to a table that we want to pull in. Bring this stuff in. And again, I'm lazy, so I'm going to steal from this, although we're going to change it up in a minute. Oh, look, they've got all their data up there. We'll just change that out too. A little while. So right here, let's put our table in. Let's format. Hopefully it fixes that. Does a decent job of fixing it. All right. So I'm going to also, because it'll be faster than anything else, create data. What does this create data? Oh, it's just making them objects. All right, fine. What?
We're commenting on frozen yogurt.
Must be British. That must be. All right. So let's see, you know, I'm stealing the bits of data from there to get it. Oops. Classes is not defined. All right, line 85. Yep. I'm not applying any styling from that. Let's try that. Ah, we've got a table card now with our stuff in there, right? Looking a little bit like this. You know, maybe we need to make it tighter. It's too wide. All right, so maybe, oh, dense table. Look at that. It's probably just going to be some flag on it. Size equals small. So just by passing in this property into this component, I think we'll be able to change the size of it to be much more condensed, right? And that's not like, that's what I'm getting at with this stuff is this isn't magic. Somebody, you know, it's not like some bit of magic they did there. They wrote the React code like we've been writing in class with a component that takes in a property of size as an optional property for it. And if it says small, it just changes the styling for that component, right? So that makes it really easy for us to consume this component and play with these different variants without having to hand code all of that. And it's all hidden behind this abstraction layer of this table and the pieces behind it, right? So I didn't have to go down into how does all of this work. I don't have to even pull this in some really complex way. It's almost like I'm building out an HTML site and I just have custom elements that I can pull in with custom styling. And that's not a coincidence. We haven't talked about it in class, but one of the trends or one of the things that browsers have been working on for like a decade and keep not quite getting there in a way that works for everyone is what's known as custom components or custom elements. And that's literally custom designed HTML elements that you can refer to the same way that we're treating these React components when we write this JSX. The only problem is all the browsers haven't standardized. So it's like IE or Edge, has done it a certain way, and Chrome has done it a different way, and Firefox has done it a different way, and they've got different ones that they've all supported. And yet people really love that idea, and that helped drive the design of a lot of these modern front-end frameworks is, oh, what if we actually could do that now, as opposed to having to wait until it works everywhere, right? All right. I don't know if you guys want me to keep going through more of this. We can cut this now. I was just trying to show you something, some sort of how fast you can leverage existing frameworks, right? Now, mind you, there's a lot of cut and pasting. You saw a lot of little edge cases that went wrong. I had to pull out some of the styling bits. I wasn't even able to solve one of the problems. So it doesn't mean that everything, when you're pulling in another library, is like, oh yeah, that's trivial, I just dropped that in. Sometimes something comes really fast. Sometimes you go, oh man, I'm trying to figure out how to get this drawer to work, and it's taken me 2 days because that wasn't the easy part of the framework, right? But it's almost always going to be faster than if you had to write it out completely from scratch yourself, because there's a ton of little edge cases and tricks that they've already encountered, and tons of other people leveraging the same framework have encountered, and they've already fixed.
I think your chat real quick. Do you mind?
Yeah. You guys want to?
If anybody doesn't want to be in it, just step to the side, and I'll just real quick take it, and I can go. You guys do your. Do you want to go?
Sure. I'm going to, real quick, I'm going to end the video, and then I'll be doing hands-on for anybody who has questions afterwards. So I'm going to stop the stream now.